Judas didn't just betray Jesus, he betrayed all of us. And the way The Chosen ended season 5, it wasn't just heartbreaking. It was devastating. The kiss we all knew was coming hit harder than anyone imagined. And now, fans across the world are asking the same question. Are we ready for what comes next? The final moments of The Chosen, season 5 didn't whisper, they roared. And it wasn't because of a dramatic sword fight or a miracle, it was because of a whisper, a kiss, a quiet moment soaked in agony. Judas stepped forward from the shadows, looked Jesus in the eye, and said that one haunting word, Rabbi. Jesus, still steady, still calm in the face of betrayal, replied with perhaps the most gut-wrenching line in the entire series. My friend, do what you came to do. And then it happened, the final kiss. The moment fans had dreaded, the act that broke trust, shattered innocence, and confirmed the prophecy in a single breath. And just like that, season 5 ended, and we were left staring at our screens in silence. But if you're like me, the silence didn't last long, because within seconds, the questions began. What happens next? What will season 6 show us? Will it be darker? Will we see the trials, the flogging, the crown of thorns? So many of us are still emotionally recovering from Gethsemane, that sacred garden that turned into a battlefield of the soul. That whole sequence was almost too much to handle. Jesus praying alone, the disciples asleep, his voice cracking as he whispered, I don't think I can do this. It's not just a scene anymore. It's become a permanent emotional scar for fans who watched it unfold. And Dallas Jenkins, he knew what he was doing. He planted every seed across the season so that this final moment would strike like lightning. And it did. The betrayal wasn't sudden, it crept in slowly. You saw Judas wrestle with himself. You saw the doubt, the cracks. And still, when it finally happened, it felt like a punch to the chest. Even if you knew it was coming, nothing could prepare you for the way it was shown. It wasn't loud. It wasn't action-packed. It was quiet, personal, intimate. What made it so devastating? And now, here we are standing on the edge of season 6, knowing full well that things are only going to get more intense from here. Behind the scenes, the crucifixion scenes have already been shot. We've seen glimpses, leaked images. Low quality, yes, but the emotion still comes through. We've seen Jonathan Rumi on the cross, or at least his body double. We've seen the wounds, the bruises, the torn flesh. But what Dallas confirmed in interviews is even more telling. He's not going for gore, he's going for heartbreak. Emotional depth over graphic violence. And that, honestly, might hurt even more. Because we've known this Jesus for years now. We've cried with him. We've watched him laugh, struggle, and comfort others. This isn't a character in a movie anymore. This is someone we've followed through 5 powerful seasons. And now we're about to see him suffer in a way that's going to haunt us. Not because of the blood, but because of the silence. The rejection, the loneliness, the moment when even his closest friends vanish. The moment when the very people who sang Hosanna just days earlier start shouting, "Crucify him." And here's where it gets even more real. Production on season 6 is officially underway. They've already filmed scenes with Pilate, scenes from the Sanhedrin trial, and yes, Herod's robe has been spotted. Every piece is falling into place. The cross isn't just coming, it's already built. And Dallas has confirmed the structure of the release. We're not getting just 8 episodes this time. 6 regular episodes will come first. And then a full-length theatrical film dedicated to the crucifixion. And if you think it'll be just another retelling, think again. Because this isn't the Passion of the Christ. It's not about shock value. It's about the relationship we've built with Jesus over the past 5 seasons. How that relationship will be tested, broken, and ultimately transformed. And while we don't know exactly how far they'll go visually, emotionally, we're about to be wrecked. But before we jump into what happens next in season 6, we need to take one more look back at the exact moment everything changed. Not the kiss, not the arrest, but what led Judas to that gate in the first place. What really pushed him over the edge? What made him say yes to betrayal? Is it possible that Judas still believed he was doing the right thing? It's the question that won't leave our minds. Why did Judas do it? We all know the prophecy, we all know the scriptures. But The Chosen didn't paint Judas as some cold villain hiding in the background, twirling his fingers in secret. No, he was one of them. He laughed with the disciples. He followed Jesus. He sat by the fire, listened to the parables, watched the miracles. He wasn't just a face in the crowd, he was a friend. That's what makes it all so painful. And the way the show handled his descent, it was slow, uncomfortable, and tragically human. Judas wasn't just tempted, he was confused, disappointed, impatient, maybe even scared. You could see it in his eyes. The way he watched Jesus with a strange mix of admiration and unease. He wanted the kingdom, but maybe not the kind Jesus was offering. Maybe he hoped for something faster, something more visible, something political. And when things didn't go that way, that tiny crack in his heart widened until the light couldn't get in anymore. That's the Judas the Chosen gave Usa man torn in two, trying to convince himself he was still on the right side of history. And isn't that what makes it all the more terrifying? Because betrayal, in its most dangerous form, rarely feels like betrayal to the one doing it. It feels like conviction, like justification. And when Judas stood in the garden, calling Jesus rabbi, it didn't feel like a man committing treason. It felt like a friend taking his final step off a cliff, and Jesus didn't stop him. He didn't plead or resist. He looked at him with eyes full of sorrow and said, "My friend, do what you came to do." That wasn't sarcasm. That was grief. But it's what happens next that has every fan talking. Because now we enter the darkest hours of Jesus' life. And the filming that's already wrapped for season 6 hints at scenes that are going to leave us breathless. We're talking about Jesus' standing trial, not just before one man, but before the entire machinery of religious and political power. The high priests, Pilate, Herod, the mob, and Jesus. He doesn't fight, he doesn't defend. He stands in silence, letting the weight of prophecy crush him one step at a time. Behind the scenes, it's already been confirmed. Many of these moments have been shot in full. The scene with Pilate interrogating Jesus, the purple robe that mocks his kingship, the flogging that leaves him barely recognizable, and though Dallas Jenkins insists the violence won't be graphic, that doesn't mean it'll be easier to watch. In fact, it may be harder. Because the emotional pain, the psychological torment, the sense of abandonment, that's where the real suffering lives, and the part that fans are struggling to process most. It's not just the brutality of what's coming, it's the absence. Where are the others? Where are the disciples? They're gone, scattered, hiding in fear. Except for John, none of them are present at the foot of the cross. Loyal Peter is missing. Thomas, Matthew, Andrew, all silent, all distant. And Mary. Mother Mary stands there, watching her son bleed out in slow motion. And she doesn't look away. That's the kind of emotional devastation we're walking into. This isn't just another Bible show. The Chosen has spent 5 seasons making us feel the cost of this story. These aren't just characters anymore. They're family. And now that family is being torn apart by betrayal, fear, and cruelty. And still Jesus moves forward. One silent, steady step at a time, and maybe the hardest thing to accept. Judas doesn't vanish, he has more to do. Season 6 will undoubtedly show us what happens in the aftermath. And if you know the story, you already feel the chill in your spine. Because Judas' final chapter is not one of peace. It's one of unbearable guilt, of isolation, of realizing the irreversible weight of what he's done. And when that moment comes, when he understands that the man he kissed is about to be nailed to a Roman cross, what will Judas do when the silver in his hand starts to feel like chains around his neck? 30 silver coins, that's what it took to break the bond between Judas and Jesus. A price so small, it's almost laughably until you realize it was never about the money. It was about the moment. The moment Judas crossed a line he couldn't uncross. The moment he traded eternal truth for temporary power. And now, as we move deeper into the story that season 6 will soon unravel, that decision begins to collapse under its own weight. We already know how Judas' path ends, but seeing it unfold in The Chosen, that's going to be something else entirely. Because this show doesn't rush through tragedy, it lingers, it breathes. And Judas' unraveling won't be just a heartbreak in slow motion. We'll see him try to return the silver. We'll see the growing horror on his face when he realizes there's no going back. That's the thing with betrayal. It always promises clarity and delivers chaos. And for Judas, the price of that chaos will be unbearable. The Chosen has never shied away from showing us the humanity of its characters. And Judas is no exception. His guilt won't be silent, it'll scream. But not louder than the silence he'll feel when he realizes Jesus is gone. And while Judas spirals, Jesus is being dragged through the streets. We've already seen leaked shots from the robe, the bruises, the narrow Roman corridors built just for this purpose. Filming in Italy brought a level of weight and realism to this next chapter that fans can't stop talking about. For weeks, the cast and crew worked under the Mediterranean sun to capture scenes of the crucifixion. And even though the visuals were kept under tight wraps, a few frames slipped through the cracks. Jonathan Rumi on the cross, his body suspended, the outline of Roman guards standing below. Even in blurry images, the gravity of it all is undeniable. And yet, Dallas Jenkins isn't interested in gore. He made that clear. This isn't going to be the Passion of the Christ 2.0. This is The Chosen. And that means the focus will be emotional, not anatomical. The pain will be in the eyes, the betrayal in the silence, the agony in the stillness. The crucifixion won't shock you with brutality, it will crush you with sorrow. And isn't that somehow worse? Because the truth is, we've come to know this Jesus. We've watched him speak gently to children, touch lepers, weep with Mary and Martha. He's not a stranger. He's the heart of the story. And watching him walk willingly to the cross, that will hurt more than any whip or nail ever could. And now we know how they're doing it. Season 6 will lead up to the crucifixion across 6 regular episodes. But the cross itself, the most painful moment of the series, will be its own separate film, a full-length theatrical release. March 12, 2027. Mark the date, because that's when the whole world will see what The Chosen has been building toward since the very beginning. And knowing how Dallas Jenkins operates, it won't just be another depiction. It'll be the depiction, the one that stays with you long after the credits roll. But even before that, the 6 episodes leading up to it are packed with emotional landmines. We're going to see Peter fall apart. We're going to see the Sanhedrin twist words and force lies. We're going to hear the crowds roar, not in praise, but in hatred. And somewhere in the shadows, Judas will be watching, his betrayal complete, his soul unraveling. And still, Jesus will move forward. Because that's what makes this story so powerful. It's not just about pain, it's about choice. Jesus chooses the cross. He doesn't run, he doesn't beg. He walks towards suffering so that others might live. And in Season 6, we'll see that choice played out in excruciating detail, every step, every accusation, every lash. And at the end of it, an empty tomb waiting in the distance. But we're not there yet. Before the resurrection, there's the betrayal, the arrest, the silence, and the haunting moment that echoes across history. The moment Jesus stands before the crowd, bloodied and beaten, and Pilate asks the world, "Who do you want, Jesus or Barabbas?" And what happens when the crowd chooses a murderer over a savior? Barabbas, a name we've all heard, but in The Chosen, it's not just a historical footnote anymore. It's about to become a turning point. Think about it. A crowd stands outside the palace. Jesus bloody, humiliated. Silent has just endured a night of false trials and brutal treatment. He hasn't fought back. He hasn't defended himself. He hasn't even spoken much. And standing next to him, a man who's known violence. A man with blood on his hands. A man sentenced to die for his crimes. That's the moment Pilate makes a gamble. He offers the people a choice. Mercy for one man. One man walks free, one man dies, and what happens next will never stop echoing. The crowd chooses Barabbas. Let that sink in for a second. They didn't just accept Jesus' punishment, they demanded it. They shouted for it, cheered it. They chose to release a convicted criminal instead of the one who healed their sick, fed their poor, raised their dead. Why? Why did the same people who once waved palm branches now clench their fists in rage? That's what The Chosen is going to explore, and it's going to hurt, because this isn't just a crowd in ancient Jerusalem. This is humanity. This is us. Given the chance to embrace the truth, we looked away. And Pilate, he washes his hands. But no matter how many times he scrubs, the guilt won't rinse off. His scene is already in the works. And from behind the scenes whispers, it sounds like it's going to be one of the most emotionally complex portrayals in the show. Because Pilate isn't a cartoon villain. He's a man trying to balance power, pressure, and politics. But in the end, he chooses comfort over courage. He lets the crowd decide. And when they scream, "Crucify him," he nods. That's the order. That's the moment Jesus' fate is sealed. And the journey to the cross begins. But here's the thing about The Chosen. It doesn't rush these moments. It lives in them. Breathes in the silence between words. Explores the ache behind every look. And as Jesus is taken away to be flogged, we'll see more than just physical suffering. We'll see the betrayal in every slash, the abandonment in every bruise, the weight of rejection in every drop of blood. And we already know from the early set leaks this scene won't be as visually graphic as Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ, but it will hit just as hard, if not harder. Because now, after 5 seasons of laughter, miracles, and meals shared with friends, we know this man. He's not a distant figure anymore. He's someone we care about, someone we've cried with, and now we'll watch him be crushed by a world too blind to recognize love standing right in front of them. And speaking of the flogging, yes, the infamous purple robe is real. The one they'll mock him with. The one that's supposed to be a cruel joke, a twisted crown laid on a head that truly holds the universe. The leaked set photos showed it draped loosely over Jesus' shredded back. And though the image quality was poor, the emotions couldn't be clearer. This isn't just a costume, it's a moment soaked in mockery. Roman guards won't just hurt Jesus, they'll laugh while doing it. They'll strike his face, spit in his eyes, bow sarcastically, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." The kind of cruelty that doesn't come from orders, it comes from enjoyment. They enjoy watching someone break. And Jesus, he takes it silently, steadily. Not because he's powerless, but because he's focused. And this is where The Chosen is going to do something different. Most depictions of the crucifixion stop at pain. But Dallas Jenkins, he's building toward purpose. Jesus isn't just suffering, he's fulfilling. Every lash, every humiliation, every ounce of pain is leading somewhere. It's not chaos. It's not defeat, it's the plan. And though most of the world around him doesn't see it, we do. The viewers see it. The fans who've been with him since season 1, since the first miracle. The first sermon, the first dinner table moment, we see it. And that's why it's going to hurt in a way that goes deeper than just storytelling. This is personal now. As Jesus is led toward Golgotha, carrying the very cross he'll die on, we'll finally see who's still standing by him. Mary, his mother, who watched him grow, who felt every scrape and bruise when he was just a child. Mary Magdalene, the woman he saved from the edge of madness. John, the youngest disciple, still clinging to courage when everyone else has fled. And maybe, just maybe, a few faces in the crowd who remember what he did for them but stay silent. Because even now, they're afraid, and silence, in this moment, is just another form of betrayal. And then there's Peter. Where is he? The man who swore he'd never deny Jesus, who drew his sword in the garden, who was ready to die beside him. And yet, when the pressure came, he buckled. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. He denied even knowing Jesus. And what makes that moment so tragic is how ordinary it is. He wasn't arrested. He wasn't tortured. He was just asked, "Aren't you one of his followers?" And still, Peter said no. That's the moment that breaks him. And that's the version of Peter we'll see unraveling in season 6. Shamed, confused, wrecked by his own failure. His voice, once loud and proud, now a whisper in the darkness. A whisper that says, "I failed him." But Jesus, he knew. He told Peter it would happen. And still, he loved him. Still called him the Rock. Because even in Peter's collapse, Jesus saw who he was becoming. That's the kind of emotional layering that The Chosen does so well. It's not just about the events. It's about the internal earthquakes happening inside these characters. And Peter's is coming. When he sees Jesus on the cross from a distance, what will he feel? What will he remember? And more importantly, will he run toward the tomb when the stone rolls away? But we're not there yet. We're still in the darkness. We're still walking the path to the hill where hope appears to die. The crucifixion film may not come out until 2027, but the emotional storm it's building has already begun. Fans are feeling it now. The sorrow, the anger, the helplessness. And it's only going to grow stronger as season 6 nears. Every trailer, every interview, every leaked image, they're reminders that we're heading into the most painful part of this journey. And no matter how much we brace for it, nothing will prepare us for the sound of the nails. And what about Judas? After all, of Etafter, the silver, the kiss, the arrest, what will become of the man who betrayed a friend to his death? Will we see the final moment, the rope, the tree, the silence? Or will The Chosen take us inside his mind one last time, before it all goes dark forever? There's a moment right before everything falls apart where time feels like it slows down. That's where we are now in The Chosen's timeline, between the betrayal and the execution. It's a space thick with grief, confusion, and unbearable tension, the kind that crawls under your skin. Judas is gone, the silver is spent. Jesus has been sentenced. And now, the road to Golgotha begins. We're in that brutal middle of the stretch of the story that many skip over or summarize in just a few lines. But The Chosen refuses to rush it. Dallas Jenkins and his team are giving us every breath, every step, every cracked whisper along the way. And it's going to destroy us emotionally. We've already seen glimpses of what's coming. And I'm not just talking about the leaks or the blurry images from the crucifixion set. I'm talking about the heartbreak we know is about to unfold. The weight that's about to drop. Think of everything Jesus has already endured: betrayal by one of his own, abandonment by the rest, mock trials, violent beatings, and now, the long march to the place of the skull. The cross isn't just a symbol anymore, it's a reality. It's wood, it's nails, it's splinters and flesh. It's a hill waiting to drink blood, and the man carrying it, he's the one we've come to love deeply through every season. Every healing, every moment of compassion, and that's the thing that makes The Chosen so different. In most films or shows, the crucifixion is horrifying because of what happens to Jesus. But here, it hurts because of who he is. We've spent years walking beside him, seeing not just his power, but his tenderness. We've seen him cry, laugh, teach, hug, and pray. We've seen the spark in his eyes when he heals someone, and the deep compassion when he sits with the forgotten. So when they shove a crown of thorns on his head, when they spit in his face, when they mock his name, not just cruel, it's personal. And season 6 will drag us through that reality, piece by piece. One of the most brutal parts, the loneliness. Jesus is surrounded by people, yet completely alone. The disciples are nowhere. His followers have vanished. The crowds that once gathered to hear him preach now stand behind ropes, jeering, taunting, and even though Mary and John are there, they can't stop it. They can only watch that helplessness. On both sides is what will tear fans apart, because we want to jump into the screen. We want to scream at the guards, push through the crowds, cradle Jesus before the nails hit. But we can't. Just like Mary can't, just like Peter can't, just like Judas couldn't undo what he'd done. And what about Judas? His story doesn't stop with the kiss. The Chosen made him more than just a villain. He was one of the 12, he was loved, and now he's haunted. Haunted by what he did. Haunted by the look in Jesus' eyes. And we know how it ends for him. The scriptures tell us clearly he takes his own life. But The Chosen will take us inside that final unraveling. We'll feel his desperation, his confusion, his horror at what his hands have caused. And that might be the hardest thing to watch. Not because of what happens to Judas, but because of what could have been. If he had just waited 3 more days. Just 3. But he didn't. And that's what makes it tragic beyond belief. As Jesus drags the cross up the hill, we'll see more than just exhaustion. We'll see a man who has poured everything out and is still giving more. Every step forward is a step into agony. His back is already shredded from flogging, his face swollen from punches, his head pierced by thorns. And yet, he walks. Not because he's forced, because he chooses to. That's the part that will crush fans. Jesus isn't dragged unwillingly, he's moving with purpose. Every stumble is a step toward redemption. Every drop of blood is a message. You are worth this. The crucifixion scenes that have already been filmed promise to be the emotional climax of the entire series. Jonathan Rumi reportedly pushed himself to the edge during these scenes. Long filming hours. Emotional exhaustion. Total physical immersion. And from what insiders have said, he didn't just act the role, he lived it. Viewers are going to feel that. In every tremble, every groan, every whispered breath, this isn't a reenactment. This is immersion. And though the film won't be graphically violent, it'll still be hard to watch because we know this man. And now we'll watch him die. And what makes it even harder, he's dying in front of people who don't understand. The Roman guards are just doing their job. The priests feel vindicated. The crowd feels entertained. Only a handful of people at that hill know what's really happening. Mary knows. John knows. Maybe Mary Magdalene sees the bigger picture, but most, they're watching the death of a criminal. They don't realize they're watching the turning point of eternity. And while Jesus is up there struggling to breathe, suffering in silence, gasping out words like Father, forgive them, or it is finished, we'll be holding our breath too. Because this isn't just the death of a character, it's the culmination of everything The Chosen has built. 5 seasons of hope, love, and healing, all leading to this brutal end. And as viewers, we won't just watch it, we'll feel it. We'll feel it in our bones, in our chests, in the pit of our stomachs. The Crucifixion movie, scheduled for March 12, 2027, is already shaping up to be one of the most anticipated faith-based releases in history. But more than that, it's a promise. A promise that The Chosen will not shy away from the hard parts. that it will walk us through the valley of shadows, that it will show the full cost of what Jesus endured. And maybe that's what makes this show so rare. It doesn't sanitize, it doesn't skip, it sits with the pain and lets us sit with it too. But here's the twist. The crucifixion isn't the end of The Chosen. Not even close. Because Dallas Jenkins has confirmed that Season 7 is already in development. And that season will begin not with sorrow but with shock. The shock of an empty tomb. The resurrection is coming. The stone will be rolled away. And everything will change. But we're not there yet. Right now, we're still on the hill. Still staring up at a dying savior. Still hearing the sound of a hammer. Still watching love bleed. And yet, even in the silence of death, there's one burning question that refuses to be buried. What if this wasn't just a death, but the greatest victory in human history? Everything slows down after the crucifixion. Not in the world, but inside the hearts of the characters. The laughter disappears. The hope drains out. The streets of Jerusalem that once buzzed with life now carry an eerie silence. And for the disciples, everything they believed in lies. Shattered at the foot of a Roman cross. Season 6 will capture that emptiness, the in-between space where death seems final and faith feels foolish. This is not a victory march yet. This is the day after devastation, where grief sits heavy and nothing makes sense anymore. Peter is silent, not just with guilt but with shame so loud it drowns everything else. He denied the man he swore he'd die for. He failed. He ran. He left his best friend to bleed alone. And now, the weight of that moment eats him alive. Every crowing rooster will haunt him for the rest of his life. And for fans watching, it's heartbreaking to witness this once fiery, passionate disciple reduced to a broken shell. Peter's despair in Season 6 will be raw and relatable. Because haven't we all been there? Made a promise we couldn't keep? Walked away when someone needed us most? Peter's regret isn't just biblical, it's human. And The Chosen will let us feel every second of it. Then there's Mary the mother. Oh, Mary. We've seen her strength across seasons. Her quiet wisdom, her unwavering presence, but now she's just a mother who held her son as he died in front of her. No words, no miracle, just unbearable loss. The show will dwell in that silence, not rush past it. Because that's where the real pain is. The inescapable truth that even someone as holy, as chosen, as pure as Mary has to endure grief that feels unendurable. And fans, they're going to weep. Because when Mary weeps, we all do. What about Mary Magdalene? The woman who had been rescued from demons. The woman who had seen Jesus look straight into her soul and call her worthy. She followed him everywhere. She believed with everything. And now, she's crushed. Angry, maybe. Confused, definitely. But most of all lost. What do you do when the one who gave you life is dead? Magdalene's arc in Season 6 won't just be about mourning. It will be about searching. Searching for meaning, for purpose, for answers. And even though we, the audience, know the resurrection is coming, she doesn't. That ache of why did this happen will be the heartbeat of the coming episodes. And let's not forget the others: Andrew, Thomas, Big James, Little James, Thaddeus. Simon Siege dealing with the fallout in their own way. Some hide, some weep, some get angry, but all of them terrified. Because if Rome could crucify Jesus, what's stopping them from coming after his followers? That fear is real, and it will grip the early part of Season 6. The disciples scatter, not just physically, but emotionally. They are fractured, their world is broken, their leader is gone, and they don't know what to do next. Meanwhile, back in the temple, the Pharisees think they've won. Caiaphas is smug. The Sadducees are satisfied. The troublemaker has been silenced. The Nazarene is no more. But what they don't realize is they've only fulfilled prophecy. Their plan to destroy the movement has only fueled it. And though it looks like defeat now, we know something they don't. Sunday is coming. But what about Judas? His death is coming too. And it's going to shatter the audience. Because Dallas Jenkins has made Judas painfully real. We don't just hate him, we understand him. We saw the slow slide into compromise, the quiet rationalizing, the desperation for control, and now, as he spirals towards suicide, we're not watching a villain fall, we're watching a friend collapse. His final moments will be among the most agonizing in the series. Because deep down, we all wonder, what if someone had reached him? What if he had gone to Jesus after the betrayal instead of the priests? Would forgiveness have still been possible? Could grace have reached even him? These are the questions Season 6 dares to ask. But the story doesn't pause long. Because once the body is buried, the whispers start. Rumors, confusion. The guards at the tomb, the seal, the Roman watch. Everyone waiting for the disciples to try something. But they won't. Because they don't believe it's over. They believe it's too late. That's what makes the next moment in The Chosen so stunning. The resurrection isn't just a plot twist. It's a complete reversal of everything everyone believed. It's not just about Jesus returning, it's about truth returning, hope resurrecting. And for the characters, it's going to take time. To process. The coming resurrection will not be a fireworks moment. Not in The Chosen. It will be quiet, personal, shocking. Because when Mary Magdalene walks to that tomb expecting death and finds life instead, it won't be a celebration. It'll be disbelief. The guards are gone. The stone is moved. And the tomb is empty. She falls to her knees. She panics. She thinks someone has stolen him. Until she hears her name. Just one word, Mary. And she knows. She knows. That voice, that presence, that impossible truth. He's alive, but that scene is still ahead. In this section of the story, we're sitting in the ache. The absence, the crushing feeling that everything is over. That darkness has won. And in this part of season 6, fans are going to cry. Not because the story ends in tragedy, but because the silence feels so final. And yet, deep down, we all know it's not the end. It's just the silence before the explosion. The stillness before the shock. Because what's coming next changes everything. But when Jesus finally reappears, when he walks through that locked door and shows his scars, will the disciples recognize him more? Will their fear keep them blind? Now here's where it all starts spiraling toward heartbreak, and you won't be ready for what's coming next. After that unforgettable kiss from Judas at the end of season 5, the chaos begins. And while we only got glimpses and behind-the-scenes footage, what's already confirmed will absolutely destroy fans emotionally. The betrayal wasn't just a single kiss, was the trigger for a cascade of suffering that is already being filmed for season 6. And it's going to be the most emotional chapter The Chosen has ever told. From the darkness of Gethsemane to the brutality of betrayal, the disciples are now scattered, confused, and shaken to their core. And Jesus? He's walking straight into the storm with full awareness of what's ahead. But that doesn't make it easier to watch. Let's talk about the arrest scene. From leaked set reports and a few blurry photos, we know Jesus is bound by Roman guards in the torchlight, surrounded by the disciples, who are frozen in disbelief. One guard grabs Jesus by the arm, and Peter reacts exactly as you'd expect. He pulls out a small knife and slashes at one of the soldiers. Fans have already spotted the fake ear on the ground in one of the leaked production pics. So yes, that famous moment with Malchus losing his ear is definitely being recreated in season 6. But here's the difference. The Chosen won't rush this scene. From everything Dallas Jenkins has teased, this version will sit in the silence of betrayal, the confusion of the disciples, and the overwhelming sorrow of Jesus. This isn't a quick arrest, it's a slow heartbreak. And when Jesus tells Peter to put away his sword, it's not just about the violence. It's a quiet moment of surrender, of trusting the Father's will even as everything crumbles around them. The guards drag Jesus away under torchlight, and the disciples are left stunned. John and Peter try to follow, but they're separated in the shadows. And from there, the pain only deepens. We've seen bits of Jesus' trial already being filmed in Texas, with the actors playing the high priests in full costume. The sin trial is set to be raw, emotional, and full of hypocrisy. The council wants Jesus dead, but they don't want the blood on their hands. They twist his words, force false witnesses to speak against him, and mock him with veiled contempt. One scene will reportedly show Jesus standing alone, his hands tied, while members of the Sanhedrin spit accusations at him from every angle. And still he says nothing. He doesn't defend himself because he already knows the outcome. But here's where it gets even harder to watch. Peter's denial. You remember Jesus warned him it would happen. And now, that prophecy plays out with brutal emotional weight. While Jesus is being questioned, Peter waits outside, trying to blend in with the crowd. But someone recognizes him. Aren't you one of his followers? They ask. Peter denies it. Then again, and finally, a third time. The rooster crows. Peter locks eyes with Jesus in the distant sand. That moment will absolutely break your heart. You can already picture the tears, the shame, the guilt rushing over Peter as he realizes what he's done. This isn't just a prophecy fulfilled, it's the crushing of a loyal friend's spirit. And Jesus, he doesn't look angry, he just looks heartbroken. And that hurts even more. Now, here's something fans weren't expecting. The inclusion of flashbacks in Season 6. According to Dallas, there will be brief moments where we see earlier memories between Jesus and his disciples during the calm, before the storm. Some are even whispering about a flashback showing Jesus laughing with the group at a campfire, sharing stories and food, smiling as he looks around at the faces of his friends. Why include those soft memories now, in the midst of such darkness? Because they remind us and the disciples what they're fighting for. It reminds us of the love that was there before the betrayal, before the bloodshed, before the silence. After the Sanhedrin condemns Jesus, they send him to Pilate. And let's talk about Pilate for a moment. The actor playing him has already been spotted in a few leaked on-set videos. And he's bringing something new to the role, not just political coldness, but a strange, conflicted energy. Pilate doesn't want to kill Jesus. He's seen too many false messiahs come and go, and this one feels different. The crowd wants blood. The priests want death. But Pilate hesitates. In one reported scene, he questions Jesus directly, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus replies, not with defiance, but with calm truth. "My kingdom is not of this world." That line alone has haunted readers for centuries. And now, we're going to see it come to life on screen, with the weight of everything pressing down on both men. But the pressure on Pilate mounts. His wife warns him she had a dream, a terrifying one. And still, the voices outside grow louder. "Crucify him," they shout. And here's the most chilling part. The same people who once followed Jesus, listened to his teachings, and watched his miracles, some of them are now screaming for his death. Isn't that the most terrifying part of human nature? How quickly love turns into fear, and fear turns into hate. Pilate washes his hands. He claims he's innocent of this man's blood. But deep down, he knows he's just sent an innocent man to die. Now let's get into the flogging scene. This is one of the most brutal moments of the story, and fans are already nervous about how The Chosen will handle it. Dallas has said clearly it won't be as bloody as the Passion of the Christ, but that doesn't mean it'll be easy to watch. Emotional intensity will be the focus. We've seen leaked images of Jesus in the purple robe, the crown of thorns on his head, and the crowd mocking him. Roman soldiers force him to kneel. They whip him with brutal instruments. And through it, all Jesus doesn't beg for mercy. He doesn't cry out in fear. He takes the pain with silent determination, knowing the purpose behind every wound. And somehow, that hurts more. It's the silence that speaks loudest. It's the restraint that hits hardest. And then there's Barabbas, the murderer, the criminal. He stands beside Jesus as Pilate offers the crowd a choice, and they choose to release Barabbas. That moment will haunt viewers, because it's not just a historical detail, it's a reflection of all of us. How many times have we chosen violence over peace, pride over love, selfishness over sacrifice? In that crowd, we see humanity's brokenness. And in Jesus' silence, we see divine love that still endures. But here's what might shock fans. The most, even after the flogging, Jesus stands. Barely. Yes, bloodied, exhausted, and humiliated, but still standing. The crown digs into his head. The robe clings to his wounds. And yet, when the guards tear the robe off his back to lead him away, he winces, but he walks. He walks to Golgotha, and the way Dallas plans to portray this walk is what will shake viewers to their core. Because we won't just see Jesus stumble under the weight of the cross. We'll see the emotional impact on those watching, the women who love him, the men who once followed him, and the city that has turned against him. And still, we're not even at the crucifixion yet. That will come in this special theatrical episode releasing in 2027. But Season 6 will end just before that, likely with Jesus falling beneath the weight of the cross, surrounded by Roman guards and a screaming crowd. And as he falls, one woman pushes through the crowd. It's Mother Mary. And Jesus looks up at her with blood in his eyes and love, pure love. So the question is, how do we prepare ourselves for that moment? How do we brace for the emotional storm that's still coming? And most of all, what will the final breath of Jesus mean when the time comes? Are you ready to see what happens next? Or will Season 6 leave us completely broken? So here we are standing at the edge of history, at the crossroads between love and betrayal, hope and despair, light and shadow. The Chosen Season 6 doesn't just promise to be a continuation of the story, it's a reckoning, a painful, profound, unforgettable journey that will stay with every fan long after the screen fades to black. And as we inch closer to the final hours of Jesus' earthly life, we begin to feel it not just as viewers, but as part of the story. Because this isn't just about what happened 2,000 years ago. This is about what's happening inside each of us right now, our doubts, our fears, our betrayals, our faith. Season 6 is asking us all one very hard question. Who are you when the darkness falls? Will you be like Peter, brave in spirit, but weak in the moment, denying what you love most when fear tightens its grip? Will you be like Judas, so close to the truth, and yet lost in your own ideas of what justice should look like? Will you be like Mary, watching her son suffer, unable to stop it, but staying close anyway, choosing love even when it hurts the most? Or will you be like the crowd, cheering one day, shouting Hosanna, and days later, screaming crucify him? Because it's easier to go with the flow than to stand in uncomfortable truth. That's the brilliance of what Dallas Jenkins and his team are doing with this season. They're not just telling us what happened, they're holding up a mirror, a painfully honest, beautifully raw mirror. And we don't always like what we see. Because the real agony of this story isn't just the whip, the cross, the nails. It's the silence of betrayal, the weight of abandoned love, the aching gap between what we hoped for and what we chose. And make no mistake, this season is going to hurt. It's going to hurt to see Jesus, the one we've walked with since season 1, the one who called Matthew out of shame, who healed the broken, who laughed with his friends. It's going to hurt watching him bleed, watching him be mocked, watching the joy leave his eyes as those closest to him flee in fear. This isn't the version of the Messiah we like to imagine. This is the suffering servant. This is the man of sorrows. And yet, somehow, in all that pain, there's still love. An unstoppable, unimaginable love, because through it, all through every betrayal, every strike of the whip, every nail, and every tear, Jesus never stops loving, not for one moment. Even when Judas kisses him in the garden, even when Peter denies him, even when Pilate shrugs and turns away, Jesus holds fast. And that is the heartbreak and the hope of season 6. That the greatest love the world has ever known wasn't shown in miracles. It was shown in the silence of suffering, in the endurance of agony, in the choice to stay when he could have escaped. And if that doesn't move us, what will? Let's not forget, season 6 isn't the end of the story, but it is the beginning of the end. Everything we've seen so far, the teachings, the healings, the moments of laughter and awe, they've all been leading here to this final road. And while the resurrection is still coming, while hope will rise again, we must first sit in the silence of Friday. We must weep at the foot of the cross before we can dance outside the tomb. That's what makes this season so powerful. It invites us to stay, not to skip ahead. To sit in the sorrow, to feel the weight. To be undone by the reality of what love really costs. And for fans who've walked this far, who've invested years into these characters, this will be the hardest chapter yet. Watching Judas self-destruct, watching Peter's guilt consume him, watching Mary's tears fall as her son is dragged through the streets, it will feel personal. Because it is, we've grown with them, we've cried with them, and now we must break with them. But maybe that's the point. Maybe we have to break before we can be rebuilt. Maybe we have to fall apart before we can understand the depth of grace. Even now, you can feel the weight of it, the silence after the kiss, the fear in Peter's eyes, the cold grip of the Roman chains, the quiet resolve in Jesus' face. It's all happening, and it's happening in slow motion. The chosen isn't rushing to the cross, it's walking there step by step. And each step is a scar on our hearts, but it's a holy scar, one that marks us with meaning, one that reminds us that love was never supposed to be easy, it was always supposed to be costly. So as fans prepare for the premiere, there's only one thing left to do. Sit in it. Let the heartbreak come, let the sorrow fall, let the silence speak.